Hi everybody, this is Professor Jason Snart. I'll be your instructor for our English 1102 online course. So I'm just doing this quick video walkthrough of our course. Think of it as kind of a informal orientation, so it's not about course content, but really just walking you through some of the component pieces here. One of my firm beliefs is that the sooner that any student could get comfortable just navigating an online course, really any course, but especially online, the better the chance for being successful once you actually get into the course content. So in our course, you'll always land at the announcements page, which is blank in this video, but obviously where you'll be watching the video once I load it into our course menu. Or you'll see frequent updates here in the announcements area. Again, usually me capturing my screen and just talking over it like I'm doing now, but usually more specific to whatever particular units or projects that we're working on in the class. So you'll always land at this announcements page, and it's important that if you see a video here, you watch it. It's sort of like the equivalent of attending class, really, even though the videos will be like 5 or 6 minutes long. So you'll see our course menu at the left that I'm just scrolling through here. Things might shift around a little bit as things become less or more important, or as we have like a conference schedule come up, or once we all have our Google account here, I'll move that down. But for the most part, it'll stay pretty much the same. So I am asking you to either get a Google account if you don't have one, or to use your own if you have just a personal account. Many people do. And again, as with all of the pieces of our course, you'll always find fairly what I hope are easy to follow directions for whatever requirement or thing we're trying to do is. And then often you'll see a video walkthrough associated with that. Generally not too complicated, I hope, and often just walking you through step by step whatever the text piece that is associated with it might be saying. So that's the first step in our course. So you'll find our syllabus here. It's embedded as a Google Doc, so you'll be able to scroll within the larger page. So always make sure that if you happen to be like up at the top of the document here, and you scroll the page, right, obviously the document will cut off and you can see other things. So don't forget to get in that window and scroll through all of it. Now the syllabus is a fairly standard syllabus. I won't go through it here. You can certainly take some time to look at it, but it's basic syllabus stuff that you probably expect. Course description, right, our general course objectives, which you'll actually find throughout the course, so you always understand why the day-to-day or week-to-week things we're doing, how they connect to that bigger picture. Some basic information about student help. This is again sort of like technical help. There's no required textbook for this course, but again, we need that Google account to help us do some things. The course calendar is all in Blackboard, which I'll show you in just a second. And you can read through like the late work policy, incompletes, plagiarism, nothing too earth-shattering here. Online etiquette, or what you probably heard of as netiquette, access and accommodation, if you want to reach out to that office. Again, basic syllabus kind of policy level stuff. Okay, so our course is, again, designed to be or to feel like not a classroom, like a face-to-face experience, but certainly a class experience, so that you're not just feeling like an individual looking at text on a screen and producing, an essay or whatever the assignment happens to be, and sending it in, and there's me, this kind of abstract thing on the other end, right? It's meant to be more of that class community feel. So I'm an actual person. Again, that's why I like doing kind of the video announcement. Even if you can't see me, just sort of hearing me as like a normal human being, I think helps a little bit. You'll notice that early on in our course, we do just a getting to know you kind of introduce yourself phase, so not even the class content per se, but it's nice to feel connected to a community. So as such, it's not an independent or like a go at your own pace kind of a class. So our two probably most important links, are the ones that we'll go to that you need to get in the habit of going to be successful here, are always going to be the due dates, right, clearly when things are due, and also the units where all the work for the class is actually contained. And I'll look at those in just one second. You can review the grading guidelines, virtual office, so if you want to connect with me virtually, we can do that. send me an email. We'll make a time to meet, and then we'll come and have this virtual office space where we can conference together. We can audio, video, but also screen share. So if you have a writing project or even a technical issue you're having, I can always look at your screen and actually see what's going on. So it's a really effective conferencing system, but also troubleshooting system as well. My contact info is here. We have access, or you have access to the student email system, library resources, Blackboard help. Again, not really course specific here, but just sort of generic student support material. All right, so our due dates, I'll go into that first. This happens to be the fall 2017 version of this 1102 online course. So if you're seeing this in a different semester, right, this might change, but the basic framework of the course is not going to change drastically. It's really important to understand that we have a double due date system. So you'll see all of our units have 2 due dates listed for them. The first, which is explained here, is for kind of like primary or main work for that unit. An initial post, the draft of a project, the posting of a main project, whatever it happens to be. That secondary due date is really just for anything like a reply component. So everybody would post, or if you're working in a group, the group would post kind of main work for that first due date, and then everybody would have a couple of days flexibility to do the reply component, like a discussion board is an obvious example. Main post on that first day, and then replies on whatever that secondary due date is. It's always 11:59, right, end of the day on whatever that due date is, but clearly you don't want to be waiting until that late in the game to try to complete work. And like it or not, Blackboard timestamps everything, so it's hard for me not to notice if the quality of the work isn't there. I do sort of check to see what time is this being posted, how many minutes, right, between posts. Is it really jammed into like a 10-minute blast that you've done? I don't actively seek that out necessarily, but again, if the quality of the work doesn't seem to be there, if the investment of time doesn't seem to be there, because Blackboard timestamps everything, I do maybe sort of notice that. But you get a sense of just our unit layout here, and again, I've tried to keep the due dates as regular as possible so you get into the habit. I always encourage people to even set reminders on their phone just for our 8-week term here, just so you have something that's physically reminding you of get back into the online course and make sure you've done whatever work is at hand. And don't make that like Tuesday, October 31st at 11 p.m. That's not going to leave you enough time, clearly. So especially in our 8-week term, right, everything is condensed. What we would normally have 16 weeks to do, we try to accomplish in 8. So we do move pretty quickly. There's often a lot to work through in each of the units. There's really no way around that because we still have to have that full 3 credits worth of work instead of in 16 weeks, in 8 weeks. All right, so the due dates is always kind of your go-to for when is this thing due, but also like when is the next thing due. And again, I've tried to keep the due dates pretty regular so you can get in that sort of rhythm of the course. All right, so obviously we know when things are due, but now what is due? So our course is laid out in a series of units. Each unit has a title to give you kind of a sense of what's going on, but clearly not the full picture. So every unit will start with unit objectives, right? Those are our course objectives that I think sort of apply to whatever unit that we're working on. This first unit is fairly straightforward. It's just getting us oriented to the course and giving us a chance to meet each other. So kind of straightforward as far as the objectives go. And then most of our units are going to be set up this way. There's often going to be a discussion board, or things are set up as a discussion board, either because there is a discussion component or it's just a really useful way to compile the work that people are doing, even if the work is actually happening external to the discussion board. And this first one is a good example. So discussion boards you can always access by looking for that icon, the push pin, sort of push through that piece of paper or whatever it is. And then that's going to be clickable. Oddly enough, it looks very clickable on my end, but I think the student view is slightly different. So if you didn't know to click that, it wouldn't be totally obvious. So one of those things that once you know, it's easy to do, but if you don't, you're kind of mousing around looking like, where do I click? How do I access this thing? All the discussion boards are internal to the unit, so there's no separate discussion boards link here. You might see one on my screen. That's just so I can see the full list. Again, it's more of a convenience for grading than anything else. Okay, so just like we saw with the syllabus, what we have here is a discussion board set up, but the assignment itself is actually built into a Google Doc that you can scroll through. These are easier to edit for me. I can drag and drop pictures in or include pictures a lot easier. Again, sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words when it comes to how to do something. And this first assignment is just about introducing yourself, creating your portfolio, which we'll use, or e-portfolio, which we'll use throughout the term. And your first assignment using that portfolio is to introduce yourself. So the bulk of the work here, notice, is actually occurring outside of the discussion board. You're developing your own website or creating your own website, which we'll call a portfolio or e-portfolio for the purposes of our course here. So make sure, again, you scroll through that entire document to see all the stuff that's there, and scroll below it, right, to see, in this case, what the reply component is. So it's built as a discussion board. Most of the work, the primary work, is occurring outside of the discussion board, and you're really just posting the URL so that we can access your website. And then you're using the discussion board as a discussion board to actually reply to other people's posts, or really not even to the URL that they posted clearly, but you go to that website and see how they've introduced themselves. And that's how we kind of get to know each other. So most of the units will be set up this way, usually a little bit more complicated once we get into the course. And again, you might see some text changes here, but you'll get the basic idea or layout. Again, always starting with what are our objectives here, how does it connect to that bigger picture, discussion board setup, embedded Google Doc with the actual kind of main primary assignment going on, text that walks you through step by step, also some images that'll help, and then again, that reply component. Not every single unit is set up exactly the same way, but they don't vary a ton. Especially as we get a little bit deeper into the course, you'll notice that unlike units, say 1 and 2, which are pretty discrete, like we start them and then we're finished, units starting with unit 3, they kind of join together. They become stages in a larger research and writing project. So they're not quite begun and done in just that unit or due date system. There's still a due date attached with each of those stages that we work through, but they're not quite as discrete as these first 2 units. All right, and that's pretty much how our whole course is set up. So you get into the rhythm of those due dates, get in the habit of getting into Blackboard. I would suggest on a daily basis, even if it's just to, see if there's a new announcement or to kind of review the due date so you make sure you've got them right. And then obviously getting in a timely manner to do the actual work. So especially because we're online and we don't have that face-to-face classroom time each week, it's really important that if you have questions about the course as a whole, about really specific things per unit, technical issues, that you get in touch with me. Email's the best way. I'll try to get back to you right away. And again, be timely. So if you're having tech difficulties or something doesn't make sense, emailing me at 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. the night of that due date is unlikely to be a successful strategy for obvious reasons. But if you can get to me right a day or two in advance, and again, we're moving pretty quickly in the 8-week format, then hopefully we can work out whatever problem you might have. I can answer the question directly. We can virtual office. We can make a time to meet face-to-face if you're on campus, and work through whatever problem or challenge you might be facing. Okay, so my goal is always to make the organization as transparent, right, as easy as possible, so that you're not hung up on just like, how do I find things or how do I do things? But I understand that if you've never done an online course, or it's just set up a little bit differently than previous online courses, it does take a little bit of time to get used to the due date structure, how things are set up, where to go to find requirements, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't pretend that that doesn't have to happen, but my goal is to organize things so that it's as easy and sort of like the least of an obstacle that it could possibly be. But again, if you have questions or concerns, be in touch with me, and I look forward to meeting everybody as part of our English 1102 online course.